It is a coup and a tense political situation that is more than 5,000 kilometers away from us here in South Africa, but that does not mean that we are unaffected. The military government in Niger bracing itself for a response from the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, after ignoring a deadline to reinstate the country's ousted President Mohamed Bazoum. They're facing military intervention from the ECOWAS community. Also, the African Union says it has an intervention force on standby. How it's affecting us largely here in Cape Town in South Africa is, of course, the ripple effects of any military conflict in West Africa, but also its impact on flights in and out of South Africa being affected since coup leaders declared Niger's airspace off limits. Guy Leitch is the editor and publisher of SA Flyer magazine, joins me now on the line. We had a couple of calls last week, in the early stages of last week, saying that flights either delayed, one or two flights not even taking off here from Cape Town, I understand, because of that no-fly zone over Niger. How practically is it impacting particularly flights across Africa, largely from Europe to South Africa, Guy?
Yeah, hi, listen, nice to be with you. Well, the situation has not resolved itself as fast as we hoped it would. Fortunately, this was not back to the bad old days of when SAA had to fly around the bulge, because then aircraft were seriously limited and they didn't have the range to do that. Nowadays, it's not a big ask to ask an airline to add another 1,000 kilometers to its route and head round further to the west, which is what's been happening. They've been squeezing through Burkina Faso and Mali to get there. But the reality is the situation has not opened up as much as we hoped it would, largely because of constraints, of operational constraints that the airlines are facing, particularly in Europe. This is the height of the European summer and travel. So the airlines are already creaking under the pressure of passenger loads and demand. We've already seen signs, for instance, of Virgin Air Atlantic pilots wanting to go on strike. So this is a complication that the Western European airlines in particular really don't want at all. And when I say Western European airlines, the one that seems to have been affected the most is British Airways. And the issues here are really that they haven't got an alternative. They can't go around to the east because Sudan's airspace remains closed as well. So they've got to squeeze around to the west, and it's not likely to get any better soon as the tensions in Niger continue to escalate.
Guy, what practical impact does a detour of 1,000 or so kilometers have on fuel, on the logistics of air travel, and bottom line in terms of price for customers?
It's very significant. The airline industry is intensely competitive after all. Almost all tickets are sold on price and not on the width of the air hostess's smiles or any other criteria. And to add another 1,000 kilometers is more than an hour's flying. So it adds an enormous additional cost. And what we need to understand as well is that it costs fuel to carry fuel. So you've got to carry more fuel to burn for the extra range. And you've got to add additional fuel just to get the fuel that you needed for the additional range up as well. So it adds significantly to the prices. So we're going to see, especially for last-minute .bomb bookings, a significant increase in prices on this, while they try to compensate for the earlier bookings, which were obviously at fixed prices. And of course, the schedules are up in the air. The airlines are having enormous problems with connectivity because the flights are getting either delayed or even cancelled in some cases last week. The airlines have had to put up passengers in hotels, or they're missing connecting flights. So the problems or the repercussions are really widespread.
Do we see the chance of more stopovers at centres like Accra in Ghana to refuel, and what impact does this have then on overall flight times and routes?
I don't anticipate refueling stops. As I said, these days all the aircraft can comfortably handle the 11-hour sectors from Joburg or Cape Town to Europe. But what it does affect is payload. So they're not going to be able to take as much cargo, and or passengers as they would have because of the additional fuel load that they've got to carry. It all affects profitability. It all pushes up prices.
Guy, the good news is a report this morning that Niger's military leaders saying that they're willing to discuss issues with ECOWAS regarding the ousted President Mohamed Bazoum, but at the same time there are plenty of concerns of a broader conflict. France says that it wants guarantees that its interests in Niger are not impacted. They have stories of the mercenary group Wagner also in Niger. If there's a full-blown war between Niger, the military government, its partners in the Wagner group, and then you have ECOWAS and you have African Union intervention for saying, look, this could turn into an armed conflict. That doesn't mean good. These things are usually protracted. We've already seen the impact of the no-fly zone over Ukraine on the Russia-Ukraine war. We really want this resolved as quickly as possible.
You're 100% right, Lester. And let's not forget that the real worry in this whole mix is Wagner, because they have shown the ability to launch these UK missiles. And that was, after all, one of the missiles, or the missile that brought down that Malaysian flight over the eastern Ukraine, about 8-9 years ago. And that's one of the reasons why, obviously, the airlines have to give this airspace a wide berth, literally. But, at the same time, the airlines are absolutely risk-adverse. Their insurance will certainly not let them fly anywhere near a military zone. And as long as the situation continues, the airlines are going to have to continue to squeeze around to the west, and just the additional costs and the additional times and problems for travellers will continue. It's not a technical problem; it's a political problem.
Guy Leitch is the editor and publisher of SA Flyer magazine. Air France expecting longer times from sub-Saharan hub airports that have flights between Charles de Gaulle in Paris and Accra in Ghana. Spokespeople for Lufthansa and Brussels Airlines said that the Belgian Airlines said that flight times could be between 1.5 hours and 3.5 hours longer for these rerouted flights. We'll keep an eye on from our side. But have you been affected by a transcontinental flight from Europe to South Africa? How long have those flights lasted? What was the detour like, and how much longer were you in the air for? Let us know.